There we go. Just waiting for Facebook to start. There we go. Always takes a little while to start. So, welcome to my show tonight, where I'm going to be talking about why we all react differently. And why? Why do we all react differently? Why is it that, some of us, when we feel triggered, we with anger, frustration, maybe self-pity, blame, guilt, those sort of things. Whereas other people respond with calmness, confidence, power, feelings of understanding, empathy, those sort of things. So what's the difference? Why do some people react with these self-defeating sort of ways, and why do some people respond in a different way? What makes us different? Why do some people act a certain way, and why do other people act another way? You can say, yes, we're all different, but why are we all different? What makes us different? What is that makes us different in the terms of how we respond or react to things? So whenever we experience something that triggers us, we experience a stress reaction within us. And that comes from a very highly emotional place. And how we feel emotionally is dictated directly by what we think, what we believe, and what we feel about ourselves, the others, situations surrounding us, the world at large. So all of those emotions that we've got inside come from our belief system within us. If there's a part of you that struggles to accept something within you, be that to do with your own life or the world around you, then the likelihood is that when you encounter something or someone which triggers you, your reaction will come from a place of stress. And when we feel stressed, we tend to only ever see things through the lens of either victimisation or conflict. So your reaction will come from one of those areas. Doesn't matter what the stressor is, when we feel triggers, we automatically respond or react from those low level of energies. And that's why we say and do things that we often regret. For years, I actually struggled with self-acceptance. I blamed myself for my past reckless behaviours, which led to so much hurt, pain, trauma to my family, to me, to my friends, to people around me, and to countless other people as well. The list goes on. I struggled with my self-esteem. I struggled with my confidence. And as a result, I had a deep down sense of self-loathing, blame, guilt going on. So every time I got triggered, I would respond or react from those areas in a defensive sort of way, and I would find myself easily triggered by negative comments or situations. I experience, generally we all do. Every day we experience something that can trigger us, whether it be on the news, whether it be a friend saying something, or something that's happened with a partner or whatever. Things get said, done that can trigger us and create those feelings of resentment or frustration, anger, those sort of things which hold us back in life and don't really move us forward. So for years I struggled with that, and I didn't really know how to move on from that past and the beliefs. If someone gave me an accolade or a compliment, I would often reject it because I didn't feel that I was worthy of it, because deep down I was struggling with my own self-esteem, and as a result I had a real feeling that I wasn't good enough. I wasn't accepting. I didn't deserve those accolades or the good things that were coming into my life. So I would always struggle with that, and I would find myself easily triggered by negative things. So leading to counterproductive feelings, emotions, and actions. And as soon as I felt that way, it could destroy my day. What I was planning to do would go out the window because you're fixated on one thing. You're not focused on what you should be doing, and you're feeling low as a result. And that sort of just embeds that feeling of you're not good enough. You feel even worse. So you did lash out at people, you say and do things that you later on regret. And often much later you'd calm down, you'd reflect, you'd wish you'd acted differently. And, that further fuels the feeling of self-loathing, your lack of self-belief. So when you're telling yourself, I wish I'd done that differently, you're again telling yourself, I'm not good enough, or I reacted, or I did something wrong. So there was one main thing that I've worked on. Well, there's several things, but one main thing which I've worked on internally over the last couple of years, and that is self-acceptance. And that means no longer judging yourself or my past as good or bad, right or wrong. You know, removing the judgment, simply accepting it as it is, without that judgment. And last week, I bizarrely, and it was very bizarre, I received a stream of very negative, conflict-driven sort of messages from people on social media. You know, it was clear that the people were obviously unhappy within themselves. And even though they were quite abusive, one of them called me a fake Tony Robbins, which I actually found quite funny. But in days gone by, I would have instantly reacted from a place of conflict or victimisation to this, you know, further exacerbating the situation. However, this time was very different. I didn't react in the way that I normally would have in the past. I didn't feel that feeling of conflict or victimisation. And this time I responded instead. I was calm, I was rational, I responded without the judgment, tried to understand their situation a bit better. I was able to, you know, instantly see that these attacks on me weren't about me. They're more about the individual and what they're going through rather than anything that I've done. You know, something I've probably said triggered something inside them, which has led to them reacting in the way they did towards me. You know, I don't know what it was, but, you know, that's the thing. Because if you're not happy with something in your own life and someone says something that triggers you around that, it will lead to you reacting in maybe a defensive way or an angry way or a conflict way, because it's highlighting things about ourselves that we're not necessarily happy about or don't particularly like about ourselves. And if something triggers that, it brings it to the fore instead of burying it and pretending it's not happening, and then that leads to us reacting. So, you know, there was more to it in this situation. The reason why I didn't react instantly like that, like I would have in the past, was because I'm more at peace with myself now than I've ever been. You know, I'm not a finished article by a long shot. There's a lot of work I need to do on myself and so on. But the point is I've done a lot of work internally on myself over the last couple of years specifically. And in that time, I've become much more confident, much more happier within myself. I'm more balanced in my thinking, more rational in my thinking. I'm more calm. I'm able to reflect, eat quicker. And I don't, you know, react in the same way to things like I used to, because I've become much more accepting of those things that used to get triggered. So the things like I'm not good enough, or I'm I don't know, a fraud or a failure or whatever it may be, or a bad person or whatever it may be. If something like that went in the past where I had that sort of belief system where I was telling myself stuff like that, maybe subconsciously, but still telling myself that, it was in my subconscious mind, self-defeating stuff like that. You know, when we all do it, we've all got them, beliefs that we've created throughout our lives. And if you've got a belief like I'm not good enough, for instance, going on, and someone says something that triggers that, then it'll come to the fore and you'll react to that. And that's why I was experiencing in the past when people used to say or do things, specifically when I was young, and you know, like I used to get in trouble fighting all the time because, you know, I had a belief that, you know, if someone bullies you or talks down to you, attacks you, then the best way to deal with that is through aggression and violence, and to react that way. And I learned to change that belief because I knew it wasn't serving me. And now I wouldn't react in the same way I used to. And that's the same as if you were talking about something that's not necessarily violent or anything, but it could be hurtful in some way, like telling you that you're a failure or whatever. And that then taps into your own self-belief, your own belief system, which tells you the same thing. And then you're naturally going to react to that. So we all have a belief system, and you know, it's normal for us to all have these subconscious beliefs and ideas and thoughts and things that we've developed throughout the years, which create how we see the world. You know, and if you've got beliefs going on which no longer serve you in some way, then it will lead to you getting triggered much more often than you should be, and reacting in ways which absolutely completely throw you off track to where you really want to be going in life. So it's very important that you understand how to identify the thoughts and beliefs that are creating your reactions. And when you do that, and when you become much more self-accepting of yourself, you're able to actually identify the beliefs and then remove them or change them to things that actually serve you more. And that then leads to you reacting less to things that normally would have created some sort of stress reaction within you. And instead, you're able to respond in a much more constructive way to any situation that you experience. And the formula here is, it's not an easy thing to do, you know, so get it out of your head. If you think you can click your fingers and do it overnight, you can't. It takes a long time. So, but the formula here to success when it comes to controlling your triggers in life, and you know, it combines two different elements which, when practiced daily, every day, over a period of time, and you get better at it over a period of time and much more conscious of how you're doing it, and finally becoming it, you eliminate the unhelpful beliefs in your belief system, or become much more aware of them so you can manage them, and that they no longer hold you back. And you know, the things that no longer serve you no longer hold you back, because you're changing them to things that do serve you, thoughts and beliefs that now do serve you. And the two elements that I'm talking about are self-awareness and self-acceptance. Imperatively important to master both of those if you really want a life which is free of stress and worry and anxiety and all the other things that hold us back from being really who we want to be. So these are the starting blocks to a life full of confidence, self-belief, calm, power, peace of mind, all the things that we really want out of life, total fulfillment. So when you master these elements, you'll be less triggered by people or events around you that in the past may have triggered you, and you'll be more in control of how you respond to these situations in a way which helps you grow, learn, and move forward. So that experience I had the other day highlights that. In the past, that would have dragged me down. I would have felt low, I would have felt crap, and I would have probably done something or said something which I would regret later. But however, I was able to reflect quite quickly that there was an opportunity here of growth, and it taught me that, you know, I'd done a lot of work over the last couple of years, and that work paid off, because it was the proof I needed that the acceptance was there. Because it's easy to say we accept ourselves, but until you've actually been tested or challenged in some way, you don't know. And that was my test, that was my challenge, and in that instance, I came through it in the way that I chose to come through it. I managed that situation in a constructive way, and I grew from it. Now, we can all do that, and it's just learning how to do that. And if you're interested in finding out how you can do that, I help you do exactly that, become much more self-aware, much more self-accepting. So get in touch with me if you're interested in finding out more about how I can help you do that. And have a wonderful evening, even though it's not very nice out there tonight. Right, hopefully speak to you next time, and have a great week.